Hi, I assume everyone's here for the GCP talk. If you're not, either you wandered in the wrong room or you just got lucky. First, I would be remiss if I did not thank our sponsors. They make this whole shindig happen. Without them, we just wouldn't have this thing. Definitely, I've been told to encourage you to go out and mingle with the sponsors out in the lobby and everything. So I guess why should you listen to me on this thing? I'm Thomas Wodarek at BeerCityCode on Twitter. Yes, I'm an amateur radio operator. I'm a site reliability engineer. I just started with Arbor Networks, aka NetScout. I've been playing around in GCP Google Cloud Platform. I will always just abbreviate it GCP. I've been playing around in GCP for probably 2 or 3 years now. Professionally working in GCP for 2 or 3 years. Before that, another year or 2 playing around, just getting my feet wet. So I guess as a little bit of just to show you where we're going, I'm going to do a little bit of intro, then I'm going to sort of walk you through the tech and the terms. We'll actually walk through the GCP console and give you sort of a feeling of how things are at. I warn you, a lot of things are going to move very quickly. There are a very large number of products that hide under the Google Cloud flag. So it's just going to move quick with everything. If anywhere in there someone wants me or someone has a question, feel free to just toss it out. And if it's appropriate to answer that time, we'll answer that. Or you can push it off to I'm going to have a little bit of reserved time at the end for questions, as well as if it's just a one-on-one, feel free to approach me after the talk. But if you do have a question, feel free to throw it out. If one person has a question, there's probably 3 others that have as well. And then I actually have a little bit of an example app, just to sort of show you one example of what working in GCP would look like. It's pretty small. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it's sort of off the ground. Use a couple of things, see how things integrate. And as I said, time for questions at the end. I guess now that you know me, now that you know where we're going, I guess I want to know a little bit about you. Anyone in here use GCP at all? Okay, 1. Anybody use any of the other cloud providers, AWS, Rackspace, Azure? Okay, a few more. In the room, software, how many software engineers? Infrastructure engineers? Management types? Okay. Good. So, pretty good mix. I mean, mostly software engineers. So I guess focus a little bit on that. And I guess we can dive straight into GCP from there. So I know with GCP sort of being if I remember my stats correctly, GCP is the number 3 provider, but only takes up about 5% of the market share. Not a lot of people think about it, not a lot of people know about it, and a lot of people think it isn't all that well fleshed out, isn't a good product offering. As one sort of example of how they flesh things out, I just took a sampling of their compliance certifications. Yes, that is FedRAMP moderate. They're working on FedRAMP high. If anyone's in the gov space. And they have a compliance website. If that's your shtick, feel free to go there and look and see what they've done, what they've proved out. As far as GCP itself, it's Google's cloud offering. It's very versatile, very fast, and they have a lot of stuff. And I mean a lot of stuff. This is something their team put together. It's sort of the cheat sheet of what product translates to a 4-word phrase that you might be familiar with. So like cloud storage is object storage and serving. Cloud job discovery is job search with machine learning. So like this is like, I took it from their GitHub, but like it's up there. These are all of the products. We're not going to be able to touch on all of them. We're probably not going to be able to even get a majority of them. But I wanted to give you all sort of a feel of how things look, where things are going, maybe be able to get your own feet wet and sort of be able to figure your way around things. And with that, straight on into the console itself. Console.cloud.google.com. This is what happens, or this is what you land on when you load up to a project that has some stuff in it. I don't use App Engine in this one, but you'd have like some stats, like real-time usage stats here. Compute Engine, so that's their VM, their virtual machine offering, just like bare machines. You get like your billing summary, status, like this links through to their like status dashboard. So like you come straight in and, oh hey, this is our status. It gives you a summary of what's broken. Usually there's not anything listed there, but it's nice to be able to just pull up the dashboard and, oh, hey, today we might have a problem because X is offline, in the rare case that it happens. And it gives you a resource summary. And yeah. So you click the little hamburger menu down here and you get all of the things. And it just keeps going. What? Oh, yeah. Like literally every time I load this thing up, I swear something new is there. That's just how it is. You can pin. You see, I've got logging and cloud build pinned to the top. You can pick like your most common things and pin it to the top, just as like a matter of convenience. So first, we can actually look at the marketplace. This is sort of their pre-built solutions. So like vendors have put together things just like a one-click deploy. So if you need a WordPress site, here's a one-click to deploy. It gives you estimated monthly. It gives a breakdown of what resources it's using. And you click launch and it does all the work for you. It gives you your admin credentials and a URL, and you're off to the races. And there's so much in here. There's F5 load balancers. They list their own products. There's like the various operating system selections. So yes, Windows Server works on GCP. They actually break out the billing. Where is it? You don't have to worry about licensing. They build the licensing into their monthly fee. So that's a nice thing, not having to worry about licensing for the operating system. There's Memcached. Bitnami has done a whole lot of stuff as far as building pre-built solutions. There's our F5 load balancers. There's application firewalls. There's a whole lot of stuff. So if you're pulling something off the shelf, I give it a solid 50-50 that there's a pre-built something in the marketplace so that you don't have to do the work of building it out yourself. Otherwise, let's see. We can skip over these for now and go into just Compute Engine. Compute Engine, like I said, is their VM offering. You can see I've got a couple of virtual machines running. You'll see actually my Docker instance 1 is working hard. It's a tiny instance. It's an F1 micro, so that's 0.6 gigs of RAM and a shared CPU. So not a whole lot of beef there, but it's trying to do a whole lot of stuff. And they actually popped up a recommendation. Hey, it's looking like you could use an upscale on this. Here's what we might recommend. You can click apply, and it'll bounce the machine with the new settings. Similarly, I don't have a good example here. Actually, I might. Let's see if. Nope. Okay. They similarly if they notice a machine is being consistently underutilized, they'll actually pop a recommendation. Hey, it looks like you could save some money here. This is what we'd recommend downsizing to, and this is how much money per month you'd be saving. So it's a nice little, it's very helpful for right-sizing your resources. And you can see they've got instance groups, all sorts of templating stuff. Disks are independent of the VMs, so you can spin out as many as you want. Right now, I have just a one-to-one mapping from VMs to disks, but you could mount as many disks as you want to a machine. You can use them as sort of like large-scale persistent disks of some sort that would survive like machine deletion, stuff like that. You can do your snapshots, so you can take snapshots of the VMs and they snap right here. Haven't taken any. And you can do all sorts of like zoning, health checks. You can do security scans. They've been building out their suite a little bit as far as, I didn't turn that on. As far as their ability to just give you a scanner, you click go, and it like scans your machines to see if there's any common vulnerabilities or any newly reported stuff. Let's see. And I guess at this point, I should probably show you. When I said GCP is fast, GCP is fast. So let me just create a new instance. We'll put it in Iowa. We'll do 1 CPU, 3 just like their default, their N1 standard. I mean, you can customize it. You can crank your core, so for one core, you can get up to 6.5 gigs of RAM. You can have like 96 cores on this thing and like 624 gigs of RAM. Like you can make these things insanely big. But like that costs a lot of money. Like as you can see, that's $3.97 per hour. So like it gives you your monthly cost estimate right there. So you can see, okay, this thing, how much is it going to cost me? So let's crank that down to something a little more reasonable. 3 gigs of RAM. You can, if you're like dead set on a particular CPU platform, you can pick that. Like you can do your Skylake, Broadwell, Haswell, Sandy Lake. You can attach GPUs to it, and it'll give you your options as far as what ones they have available for you. Let's see. Then you can pick your operating system. So they've got all of these pre-built images for you. So we've got like Ubuntu, we've got container optimized stuff, some Red Hat, SUSE Linux, Windows Server, and the various variants, and some like Debian, etc., and some CentOS up here. You can also, they got application images, so if you need like a SQL server, hey, look, you're going to be deploying a SQL server, just like that. And they, as I said before, they handle all of the like monthly licensing for you, so you don't have to worry about that. You can upload your own images. You can create from a snapshot, so you snapped that machine like a week ago, and you just need another one at that state. Click the select the snapshot, and it'll clone it forward as a machine. And then you can clone existing disks as well. So I'm just going to do Ubuntu 1804, 10 gig persistent disk. You can do standard like Winchester spinning hard drives or SSDs. We'll do SSD because I want it to be a little bit faster. Pick your permissions. You can tell it right here on the firewall whether or not you want to allow this instance to have HTTP or HTTPS access. And then you can dig into all sorts of like security access, specified keys, additional disks, additional networking, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. Especially this. Yeah, you can attach do all sorts of stuff with this. And I should mention, if you don't want to deal with the UI is quite ergonomic in comparison to like AWS. I prefer this one, but you don't want to do that, or you want to integrate it with one of your REST clients. You click down here and you get an example, or like you get the broken out thing. So like post, then the endpoint, and then the body of the requests. And this is the same thing. Like posting this from an authenticated authenticated machine would be the same thing as clicking through the UI and spinning up exactly what I did. This is exactly the result of my machine. Similarly, click command line and it gives you the G-Cloud equivalent. Just copy paste that into your CLI and you spin up a machine exactly like I did in the UI. And also, you can click Run in Cloud Shell. I really like this thing. It gives you a tiny VM in the cloud, like in GCP, in your project, and it provisions just a little machine. And hey, look, you have a CLI in the browser right now. You can run commands if you want. I am actually going to run that and boot that machine. It is creating right now. While that's creating, I'm going to go back to the dashboard. Go back to the instance list, and you can see instance 1 is spinning up right now. These things don't take all that long. When I'm doing it in the privacy of my own office, it takes about 10 seconds. When I'm doing it in front of a crowd, it takes about a minute. So right now it's it's finding a spot on their, in one of their data centers to put your stuff in the zone and the region that you specified. It is provisioning out the disk. It is cloning the VM image into the disk and booting it up, and cross-linking all the stuff. And it's sometimes annoying to stall for it. Making me look bad. But yeah, right now it's doing all that stuff that you would normally, like if you were doing this on-prem, your infrastructure team would be, calling a supplier, writing up a PO, like ordering a server that'll be here in 3 weeks, that sort of thing. And it's just doing it now. And I prefer this, I prefer GCP to something like AWS because AWS usually takes, in my tinkering, usually takes a little bit longer, on the order of minutes as opposed to like tens of seconds to spin things up. And I guess I'm just generally biased against AWS. I always find it like, here's some ice cream and points at rock salt. Okay, that is being an annoying little munchkin. Oh, it is up. It just didn't update the... Okay, there we go. You'll see it returned in the CLI. I'm going to crank this down. You get, your information. I just click through onto the VM here, and you get some various information. If you want to see logs from the machine, you click, stack driver logging, and it pulls up the logging dashboard that I'll show you a little bit more later. You can access the serial consoles, all that fun stuff. And it also gives you like your monitoring dashboard. So like if you want to track, obviously this machine hasn't been long enough to generate data, but it'd generate like CPU charts, network, disk I/O, all that fun stuff. I do want to show you one more little nice thing about Compute Engine before we move on to all the other stuff. You'll notice right here there's a little SSH button. Let me just click that. It pops up a window. Right now it is provisioning a independent pair of SSH keys authenticated directly to your account. It's inserting them into the VM, and now it's connecting to the SSH server. And you'll see I have a SSH terminal, like an SSH interaction with the instance I just spun up here in the browser. And like, it's Ubuntu, like it's there. Yeah, it's I really like this just because I can be out and about and I don't have to be on VPN or anything. I can just SSH in from a computer. Actually, their mobile app is really awesome as far as like giving you most of the same capabilities. You can SSH from their mobile app on your phone to something, and if you like, you get a page or something and you need to respond. So just to save on my monthly, I'm going to go ahead and nuke that instance.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Those recommendations it was suggesting, can you have it automatically apply those kinds of recommendations?
Not that I know of. They still very much, like, because it's a billing change.
Right.
Like, it's changing how much you're paying per month. So they're still in the camp of, we would like you to manually approve it.
Okay.
Yeah. Though if you're looking like scaling up and out for like dynamic provisioning, their instance groups are pretty good about that. You can set like a min and a max. Yeah, you can turn on auto scaling. You can tell it what metric to watch, and it'll scale up and down based on max and min that you've specified. All right. So now to move up a little faster. So Kubernetes. I'm a Kubernetes guy. This is my thing. The Google Kubernetes engine offering is by far the best Kubernetes offering I've seen. I mean, they have an in because they sort of invented the thing, but like their UI. Excuse me. Their UI is really like, you can click through here. If there's an upgrade available, it pops a link right there. You click it and you can upgrade the cluster. That'll upgrade the master, and then you see like your node pools down here. You can similarly, like, right now I have 3 instances, right? And now in AWS, you'd have to go in and you'd have to fiddle with like your Terraform scripts, and you'd have to fiddle with your security groups and all of this other stuff. If I want 4 instances, hey, look, I get 4 instances. It'd help if I didn't, randomly mistype. You hit done, hit save, and it's spinning up a 4th node for my cluster, and it'll auto provision and join the cluster in a couple minutes. That part does take a bit, so I'm not going to sit it live. You'll see it spinning. And you can click through to workloads, and it'll show you what things you have running. You'll see, what things you got running, what services, etc. So now I know there are a bunch of software engineers in the room, right? Probably wanting to keep an eye on like the serverless offerings, so you can just write your app and you don't care what infrastructure sits under it. You just do it, right? You can go to Google has a couple of serverless offerings. There's App Engine, there's Cloud Functions, and Cloud Run. I'll quick cover them. App Engine is sort of there. You have a beefier app that needs sort of a dedicated data store attached to it, and like some authentication and a bunch of just like stuff wrapped into it. And they give you that. And you just put it up there, and it manages all of the instances for you. Like, you're not, when no one's hitting your app, you're not paying anything because it's not running. When you get, slammed with load, it spins up as many instances as it needs to take care of the load, and you pay for that at the time, and then spins them back down when you're done, or when the rush is done. Cloud Functions is a little smaller. Oops, that's Cloud Run. So you see I've got just a function here. It's a tiny little thing. It's literally just a hello world app. It's Node.js. You can pick from the various runtimes. There's Node.js 6, Node.js 8, 10, Python 3.7, and Go 1.11. And it gives you some options as far as uploading. But we can just, so you just put your app in there and it gives you an endpoint. And there's your endpoint right there. And if you whack it a couple of times, the chart will, eventually, you can see I generated a little bit of load before we started the talk. And it just gives you a nice little chart to see what's going on, what your invocations are, execution time, that sort of thing. You can see it spiked, that's milliseconds per call, because there is a little bit of a warm-up period. First invocation, after everything's spun down, there's going to be a little bit of a startup cost. But that's the same with any function-based thing. Cloud Run is you have a Docker container and you want it to run in Kubernetes, but you do not want to manage Kubernetes. So you just throw it at Cloud Run and it does it. Let's see. So we've got the storage offerings. There's Bigtable is their like massive data. Sometimes get them. It's their NoSQL database offering, which is quite like Datastore. Datastore is sort of their older thing. I'm thinking of BigQuery, aren't I? Yes, BigQuery, sorry. They have so many things. So Bigtable's NoSQL Datastore is sort of their it's another NoSQL offering. It's a little smaller, less features, but it works by default with App Engine. There's Firestore, which is the Firebase blob store. There's FileStore, which, forgive me, this looks new. Oh, yeah. It's just managing file servers. Oh, that's their NAS store, or NFS, their network attached stuff. Google Storage or Cloud Storage is something I use quite a lot. It's a blob store, but you can expose. Let's see, which one has it? Artifacts? No. Yes. Yeah. So it's a blob store that acts as just a big file dump. And you'll see I got a bunch of stuff in here. This is what I'm using. I'm serving the video files for my demo app directly out of Google Cloud Storage, as opposed to having to proxy it through my servers or anything. It's directly, and I mean oops, that was supposed to give you a nice URL view. Okay. You see, the URL is direct, that's the URL my server or my service puts into your video tag, and yeah. Let's see. We've got SQL. The Cloud SQL is MySQL and Postgres, two distinct offerings. It's got it's got replication setups, read-write replicas, all that fun stuff built in. Spanner is their horizontally scaling data store. They sort of broke the CAP theorem on this one. They figured out how to do consistency, they figured out how to do all three, mostly. If you're a hobbyist and you're tinkering with it, I suggest not moving up to Spanner unless you absolutely have to, because it gets expensive quickly. Just because you have a large number of instances running, it gets expensive quickly. And Memory Store is their hosted Redis equivalent. In your networking, I'm going to move through this a little quick. You've got your VPCs, much like AWS. You have your external IP listings. You have your firewall rules, which is all tag-based. So you create a firewall rule, you create a tag, and then you apply that tag to as many instances as you care about, or as you care to be involved in that rule. You can set your routes between VPCs. You peer the VPCs. Let's see. And then you've got your load balancing offerings, DNS, content distribution network. They have a built-in, you stand up a Google load balancer to serve your traffic, and then you just flip a bit and it builds in a CDN equivalent for you. They've got NAT. Let's see. You can interlink. So say you've got on-prem server set up and you want to peer it, you want to hook it up into your GCP project. You just hook up a VPN between the two and we'll cross-link. Interconnect, I do believe, is their peering. Let's see. Yeah. If you're one of those companies that has fiber runs all over the place and happens to want to directly peer with Google Cloud to get much throughput as possible and not have to transit the public internet, this is how you do that. I've never done it because I've never worked at those companies, but it sounds cool. So monitoring, real quick. Let's see. So monitorings run through Stackdriver. So I spun up this last night, but you get all sorts of like graphs and everything. You can set up alerting. Where is that? So like Cloud SQL, you can see, like these are just generated stuff. I didn't set any of this up. It just auto-generated a dashboard for the Cloud SQL instances that I had. You can set up alerting policies, uptime checks, where it'll just check an endpoint to see if it's there and alert you if it's not. Where was the... There we go, Metrics Explorer. Metrics Explorer is fun because it's literally just like scroll through one of these thousands of metrics. Cloud SQL uptime. And Cloud SQL is up. That's not a very interesting graph. Bytes used, sure. Just generates a graph. You can explore all the metrics that are being collected. You can dump some of your own metrics in and have them surface into that Explorer. Let's see here. Okay, so Cloud Debug is you set up your environment to, like, you have your code in one of their run in one of their offerings like App Engine or Functions, and then you give it the actual code like a source repository, and then you can go. It'll actually like cross-link all the stuff so that like an error in production gets captured and cross-links into your source. And you can actually like load it up and say, I want a breakpoint here, but not actually a breakpoint, it's a watch point. So that when someone hits that piece of code, you get like you would in a debugger, you get your snapshot of all your variables, the state, everything, as it flies by in real time. Trace is your call tracing. Logging is the log viewer, as I showed earlier. It's there's a lot of stuff in here. There's just a lot of stuff in here. You can see where it came from. That's not a particularly interesting call, but that's logging in a nutshell. Here's logging attached to one of my apps in Kubernetes. It gets automatically sucked up into Stackdriver. So you can see I was chasing a stack dump earlier. Not particularly, like, yeah. And then we've got, so that was our monitoring. Error reporting, it watches your stack dumps, and actually, my project doesn't, but this other project has. It watches for like, hey, this error hasn't been around. I haven't seen this error before. This is new. You should probably look into it. And you just click into it, and you get your stack dump. You get a graph of when it occurred. You can click through. Let's see. You can click through into. Wait, no, that's not the one I wanted. Oh, right. Sorry. You can click. You see like instance list down here. You can click through, and it'll load up the exact point in the logs where that occurred, and it'll give you context around it. So you can see, okay, this error occurred right here at the bottom. This is what preceded it. So a nice little thing. Yeah, it's really nice for when you just don't know what's going wrong, I guess. Or like, being up in production, you can keep an eye on things. So there's a whole bunch of tools. So Cloud Build we'll touch on in a second when we go through the app or the example app. Cloud Scheduler is you have scheduled things that need to occur that wouldn't be triggered. Basically Cloud cron. Tasks are just like, here's some things I need you to do in the cloud, as far as like maybe you have a big data cleanup job that needs to occur once, so you're migrating from X backend to Y backend, and just need it to happen. Container registry is where your containers are stored and served. So if you build things, need to not be in that talk. You see, like, you have all of your images right here. You can click through, and you get them right here. So these are all your Docker images that were built from like a builded pipeline. And as you can see, there's just so much more. They have an entire identity platform where you can integrate with your SSO, and you can put an identity-aware proxy in front of a service. So say a service doesn't have any sort of SAML integration or any sort of SSO integration, you plop this proxy in front of it. It deals with all your SSO for you. All your login access control just based on that proxy. Source repositories, you can basically mirror Git into here if you want. Deployment manager deals with the marketplace earlier, and so on and so forth. They've got big data offerings, AI offerings, machine learning, video. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. Also, like, not to mention their IAM controls and their entire like security build out, which I can't actually see because I'm not part of an organization. As you can see, not available for projects. It must need to be an organization. So yeah, that was a quick burn through GCP, and I just wanted to show you. So I have this little bit of an example app, just to show you sort of how like an integration works. It's tiny. Like, you've got your like, you've got like a little Nginx, Ruby, Cloud SQL, Cloud Storage. I put in Kubernetes as of last night. It was real quick, but yeah. So I call it test tube. Props to my lovely fiance for rewriting the front end, because the front end was, I'm a back end engineer. I don't do front end, so it was bare HTML. It was fun. So like, you have a video. You've got like a video. Oops. We'll call it Cool Oceans. I have a little video there, and you upload it, and it quick uploads, and what's happening up there is I put it into my app, which then shunted it into Google Cloud Storage, and then wrote the bookkeeping entry, this video exists, into Cloud SQL. And because I didn't have time to clean it up, it just redirects to like a Ruby endpoint. But you'll see we've got Cool Oceans right here. And yeah. So that is a video file served. So if you look at the movie tag, or video tag, it is literally like storage.google APIs, my project. I'm not serving it out of my servers. I'm not serving it out of any of my apps. I'm serving it directly out of cloud storage, which is an option. You don't have to do that if you don't want. It defaults to not accessible from the internet. I know AWS has had some access control issues with their buckets and companies losing data because they didn't properly lock down their buckets. These storage buckets are secure by default. You actually have to go through a thing and it warns you, hey, no, seriously, you're exposing this to the internet, before you can actually get to the point where that could occur. So what that does in a really 30-second run is, let's just go. So I have it up on GitHub. It's just a little repo. Any changes I push get merged into here. I've got in their app, there's just like, it's a little Ruby thing built on Sinatra. I've got an Nginx instance. I've got a MySQL that we're not using this instance because it was like a locally hosted thing. And then I've got like Cloud Build. So let's see. I mentioned Cloud Build earlier. Cloud Build, you set up triggers based on your repository. I just told it watch master. So you configure it in a Cloud Build YAML. You give it a number of steps. So in this case, I've got 2 encrypted files that need to be decrypted. Oh yeah, the KMS store. This uses Google Cloud Storage, Google Cloud KMS store to do the encryption and decrypt. So this is like a G-Cloud command to decrypt it based on their KMS store. It decrypts an encrypted file in the repository to an unencrypted file for building into the image. And then it builds out the 2 images, the app and the Nginx. I wanted to get auto deploy running because that is something I use Cloud Build for a lot. I just didn't have time. This is basically like a shell script, just a verbose shell script. You give it like a Docker container that needs to do a thing, and it pulls the Docker container in and does the thing. And if it returns 0, it continues on to the next step. If it returns 1, it dumps out your logs. So like you can actually see in history, we'll click through to one of the builds. It was build successful. That's the build ID. The images that resulted, where it came from, the commit hash, when it was started, how long it took. You can see each of the steps. So there's 2 decrypts. There's 2 builds. And then, like, when you're building, it'll give you a live running, this is newest on the top. It gives you a live running, like, log output. So, like, you can kick off here. Show, don't tell. Click off the build, or kick off the build, and come on. You see it running, and you see, so here, I'll put it newest on top, just so you can see it, and it's scrolling my build steps as they occur, which is really helpful for when you're debugging. So you get a full log dump, so you can do a lot of your CI/CD operations. It can't branch from one from one set of operations to another unless you build that into a Docker container. But it'll do things in step. I use it to run a lot of stuff. It's basically a cut down Jenkins without the plugins. So it runs in Cloud Build. I would optimally have it auto deploy, but I do that manually. Deploys into a Kubernetes cluster. You can see any people that are familiar with Kubernetes. You can see I've got like my apps running there in Kubernetes, and then I have an endpoint ingress from Kubernetes that serves it up, and it's there. And it backends into Cloud Storage and Cloud SQL, which we already showed. Like Cloud SQL is literally just a MySQL server, and Cloud Storage is the blob store. And that is a really quick jaunt through GCP. We have, I think, 5-6 more minutes, so I'm going to open the floor to questions. Yeah, in the back.
2 questions for you. So you're using GitHub. I take it there's no built-in version management in GCP then? Or anything like GitHub in there?
There's built-in, like, they have a full built-in, like, cloud repository offering, so you can use them as your Git source of truth.
And you can build out of that one too.
Yep.
Okay. Second question is, if you were converting from an on-prem SQL instance or Postgres or something like that, are there any conversion tools available to go to databases?
Conversion tools, like, I don't think anything out of any direct offerings out of GCP. What I would do actually in that case is I would set up a cloud SQL instance as a read replica of your on-prem, and then it would dump everything across, replicate into it, and then promote it to master. That's what I would do. I mean, if you had time to do the migration, or you could like do a SQL dump, pipe it up, import it. But if you had time and just wanted to like keep it going as much as possible, yeah, I just set it up as a read replica and shunt it over that way. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what would be a good reason to choose GCP over AWS and Azure? Is it cost, is it performance, is it capabilities?
I would say, so while GCP doesn't have as many things as like AWS does, I think the things that GCP does have are more well thought out. Like the console in this case, like I've poked around in Azure and AWS as well as GCP, and I just feel that GCP is more ergonomic, more user-friendly. So like the benefits to your team as far as management, I think would be a lot easier in this case than AWS or Azure. The costs are about comparable. I haven't looked at them recently, but there has always been sort of a race to the bottom, if you will, because everyone wants to, the cheapest is usually the easiest to pull for. But yeah, I think just their things are more well thought out. AWS just sort of, blunderbusts their way through life and puts up all these things and then builds them out later, whereas GCP sort of starts from ground zero, builds it up to be a usable thing, and pushes forward from there. I guess, if that makes sense. Let's see.
Biggest hang-ups in your education over the past 3 years, you said? What are the gotchas? Or
biggest hang-ups, sometimes there's a couple, let's see. Well, okay, Kubernetes is confusing, but that's sort of the way of things. The biggest hang-ups for me were early in my use of GCP, the lack of features, because they were sort of, I don't want to say late to the public cloud game, but they were certainly behind AWS for a while. That has since been rectified. They have a very comparable offering. They don't have stuff like, what is that? The satellite thing that AWS announced. Yeah, at reInvent. And it's like, okay, if that's your thing and you need to rent time on a satellite, like, okay, AWS has got you. But like, how many people use that? Yeah, and they are, I must admit, I have a bias towards GCP. I actually used to work at Google. I know people on the team, and they've made a commitment to be the most secure and reliable cloud. So I guess another hang-up would be like the security by default. Sometimes it is too secure, and you have to like poke your way through a little bit, make a firewall rule that is a little more open than you'd like it to. They have a lot of good documentation as far as like where things are and how to work through things, and the documentation has gotten really good in the last couple of years. But initially it was like, I don't know how to do this, open the firewall. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I hate to keep comparing your GCP to AWS, but
no.
AWS has some IoT offerings.
Yes, there is. I didn't cover it because it's like I don't use it.
It's a little more niche, but
where is it? IoT Core. They have like it's a device registry that handles a lot of the like message passing, and much like AWS does. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions, I think we're at time. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.